I'm John, and tonight I want answers about Roe v. Wade. There's no stopping us now because we're live. Oh, that guy's not live.
I'm John Thompson.
I'm John A.
Sure we're live?
I'm Keith Stattenfield.
I'm Loretta
I was
Beavers.
told we're live.
I made you
Can we
minute.
check?
I'm Jennifer Sim.
We're live on the Facebook.
I'm Bobby
I have checked
Chastain.
that.
John wants answers. John wants answers. Give John answers. Give John answers. John wants answers. John wants answers. Give John answers now.
Check your calendar. If it says May 19th, 2022, then we're live. My guest tonight is Keith Stattenfield.
You got to get a job so you know what day it is.
I have a hard time knowing what day of the week it is.
Yeah,
let alone
I
the
think
date.
you might have a hard time knowing what month it is.
May.
You could have started saying May before it came up.
I could have, but I'd look foolish saying it's May.
2022.
See,
We're live in May of 2022. What are the last times?
all right. Well, we got a big show tonight.
Do we?
We do. But first, we have so much. We have old business first,
Sure, we always have.
and then we have new business.
That's how it goes. It's old business, then new business.
Okay. Last month, you and I were here
We were.
talking about Ketanji Brown Jackson.
We were. I think. I'm told. Like I've forgotten it, but okay.
And you have been telling me, since we started the show, that all Supreme Court justices have gone to the Harvard Law School.
Well, almost all.
And I found one that didn't. Thurgood Marshall.
Okay. I mean, he's not a
went to-
current justice anymore.
He went to Howard University Law School.
Okay.
Is he from the olden days,
Yes.
Thurgood Marshall?
Yes.
Why does his name sound familiar? Did he die in my lifetime?
Yes.
Okay.
I assume. I mean, yes, he did.
All right. Next up,
Next up.
last month we talked about daylight.
Am I supposed to feel chastened by that?
chastened?
Yeah. Like, should I feel bad for messing up on that fact?
Not that so much as the stuff we're getting to later.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because it's important for me to know why I should be feeling bad about things.
Okay. Daylight savings time. We talked about that last month.
Sure. Yeah. Well, okay.
And you said,
Again, I'm trusting you because as I leave the studio, I forget the show.
exactly. And you went on saying, Marco Rubio just showed up and said, hey, let's vote on this daylight savings time bill I have.
Yeah. Well, it's a little more complicated than
Which
that. But
sounds
yeah.
weird because he's got to convince Chuck Schumer, that's the Senate Majority Leader, right?
Yes.
Okay. He has to convince him to put it on the agenda, right? So
Not
like,
exactly how the Senate works, but
I thought
go on.
the way it worked, well, you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. Like, senators can't just go in there and start saying, vote my bill. It's got to be tabled.
That's correct, they can't.
Yeah, it's going to be tabled.
It doesn't have to be tabled.
And the guy who sets the agenda is Chuck Schumer.
Yes, but like every morning, they have these votes on innocuous things, like let's name a post office something or whatever, and they're supposed to be non-controversial bills. And so, like, if you're in a senator's office and you want to name a statue after somebody, you kind of send in a bill and you're like, we want to do this, and it's non-controversial. No one's going to care about it.
Okay.
And then it just comes up in this little session every so often. Everyone that's in the room is like, sure, whatever.
Okay.
That's what he did with the let's get rid of daylight savings time bill. He just kind of sent it through like, hey, let's see if anyone cares about this. And normally, some senator's office is going to look at it and go, oh, yeah, we care about this. And then they're going to put a little check mark on the front of the bill and they're going to send it back. And it's not going to show up on the, hey, here's all the crap that nobody cares about.
Okay.
In this case, that didn't happen.
I understand. Okay. Now that's all settled.
Sure, it's not settled, but sure.
On to our big topic, Roe v. Wade.
Remember when the show used to be fun?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because here's a clip from our first episode we ever did.
Okay, it was that show also wasn't fun, but go on.
Well, fun in a different way.
It was fun for me.
Let's see a clip of the first show.
Yes.
What is Roe v. Wade?
Well, like I said, a lot of people come from Harvard. Harvard is just huge in the rowing. With the tiny little canoes up and down whatever that river next to Harvard is. That's the row part. The wade part is if you're not good with the little canoes and you tip over, then you have to go back out and get the canoe and bring it back on shore and dump all the water out. And to do that, you have to wade in the river.
All right. Have you changed your position on what Roe v. Wade is
Again,
now?
remember, you came to me a long time ago and said, hey, you want to do a TV show together? And I was like, sure. And then we had TV show 1, and then you asked me a bunch of questions, and then I was just flippant and said whatever I wanted to kind of mock or poke you. And then I was told that was not okay, that caused upset.
But
and
that
so
still
then
continues
from
to happen.
episode 2 on, I try to kind of be truthful-ish, be mostly answering your questions and kind of poke at you around the edges instead of just blatantly lying to you and the viewers at home. All the rest of them knew I was lying.
Very good. All right. So tell me, what was the Roe v. Wade decision?
Roe v. Wade was the name of a kind of the colloquial name of a Supreme Court decision from 1973, in which the Supreme Court largely said women in America, pregnant people who are pregnant, have a right to terminate that pregnancy under certain conditions. And mostly, originally, Roe v. Wade, which was Jane Roe was the woman for whom the case was brought on behalf of. She had gotten pregnant in 1969.
So
Filed a
presumably
case
she had
against
the baby already by 73.
She had. She filed a case in Texas saying that Texas's statute, which essentially said abortion is illegal in Texas, you can't get one ever unless the health of the mother is in imminent, is a very significant imminent potential for loss of life. Wade was the district attorney in the county that she lived.
Okay.
So, a couple lawyers in Texas filed a case against the district attorney, and it took 4 years to finally get to the Supreme Court. I think it took 2.5 years to get to the Supreme Court. It took the Supreme Court like 1.5 years to finally come out with a decision, I think.
Okay.
And the decision created these dates. And what they essentially said was, we believe in the first trimester, women have essentially an unfettered right to an abortion. They just ought to be able to do it. In the second trimester, the state has some right to set conditions for when abortions can and can't happen and under what conditions. And in the third trimester, the state has a significant interest in protecting both the health of the woman and the health of the developing baby, and so could set up, conditions under which it was only permissible.
Okay.
And that was Roe v. Wade, 1973, a 5-4 decision, I believe.
So it's close.
It was close. And it kind of instantly it said this is a constitutional right that women just have. And it said that any laws that affected abortion essentially they'd be held to the highest possible standard when states passed them.
And so states continue to try and pass these restriction laws, but
Well, eventually they
often
did,
ruled
right? I mean,
unconstitutional.
Roe v. Wade came out in 1973, and instantly, across America, every state law that prohibited abortion, certainly in the first 6 months, was no longer enforceable.
were there a lot of states that had laws?
Almost every state had decided abortion was impermissible
Oh,
prior to 1973. I think there were
Every
three
state?
or four states.
okay.
You get an abortion in New York. I think you get an abortion in California. Even there were, hoops you had to jump through.
There's a movie called Dirty Dancing, set in the
Yes.
past. Was that set in the
In the
States?
60s, I think, and it would have been set in New York,
Okay. So
Catskills.
before Roe v. Wade in New York, was it legal?
I believe it was legal,
Because in that case, in that movie,
but I'm not sure.
That lady
there were
had
still
problems.
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she had to pay for it,
well, yeah.
and she had to hide it from her parents.
But didn't she also have to go to like
And I think she
a
had to go
back
to New
alley
York City
type
to a
person?
Yeah, Dirty Dancing I haven't seen in 30 years. So I can't answer. I recall that's a plot point in the movie, but I don't recall any more.
It's
other
a
than-
classic.
Yeah.
Okay. So this ruling specifically said you can't ban abortion in the first trimester.
You really can't restrict it at all in the first
Mm-hmm.
trimester.
Okay.
And it's difficult to restrict up until the third trimester.
Right. Is there a concept of like the date when the fetus would be viable outside the mother?
That's how the Supreme Court kind of came up with this trimesters thing.
Okay.
They kind of thought at 6 months we've had premature infants born sometime after 6 months that have survived,
Right.
and so possibly the state has a compelling interest in ensuring that that's possible.
Before the legalization or was it legalization or decriminalization of abortion across the land?
Probably more the decriminalization because
Okay.
they didn't actually pass a law. They just said under the Constitution and laws we already have, it's legal. So I mean, yes, it was legalized. Turns out it had been legal the whole time, and they'd just been enforcing it wrong.
Okay. So before Roe v. Wade, I've heard stories involving coat hangers.
Yeah.
Now, what's this story about?
Well, coat hangers are cheap, and they exist everywhere. And if you are pregnant and need an abortion, and you can't legally get one from a doctor, you essentially can use a coat hanger, and you can kind of form a little hook, and you can scrape the inside of a uterus with the coat hanger.
That sounds terrible.
It's terrible. That's why
We should do that anymore.
we shouldn't do that. But that's what happened, women who wanted to not be pregnant were essentially, they had very few options.
Right.
One of the bad options they had was to, pay someone with a coat hanger to try to scrape the inside of their uterus.
And I imagine these coat hanger people are not professionals.
That is entirely correct. Almost all of them were not professionals. I'm pretty sure if you're using a coat hanger, you're not a professional.
Right.
And it's dangerous because
They could
you're
poke
not
things.
you're often not doing it under medically sanitary conditions.
Right.
You can puncture the uterus. Even scraping it, you can tear the uterus. You can, lots of women died because they bled to death after back alley abortions with coat
And
hangers.
they didn't want to go to the hospitals because what they
And
did was
they couldn't go to the
illegal.
hospitals because the hospital would report them to the police. They'd be arrested. Not a good time.
That was a bad time. Okay, now the problem here, that was a bad time. Are we heading for another bad time? Because I heard Roe v. Wade may be overturned.
There's a a leaked draft of a Supreme Court opinion,
Right.
which implies that there are 5 justices that think Roe v. Wade was decided improperly and should be entirely overturned, and the follow-on cases after it. There was Casey v. Planned Parenthood in like
Right.
1982, which actually threw out that whole trimester thing
Okay.
and lowered the standard that states had to meet when they passed laws. So after Casey, it became easier for states to pass laws that restricted abortion in ways. And states over the past 40 years have nibbled away and imposed more and more restrictions on abortions to get us to where we are today, where there are plenty of states in this country where effectively it is impossible to get an abortion.
Now, the Supreme Court, did someone come to them with a case they decided on, or they just decide amongst themselves? Remember that old case that our forefathers decided? We should change it.
Nominally, Mississippi passed a law a couple years ago, I think 3 or 4 years ago, that said abortions after 15 weeks are not allowed at all.
Okay.
And under the Casey decision from 1982, that said abortions are permissible up to 26 weeks. I don't remember the exact number. 15 weeks is way less than 26 weeks. So if you look at precedents, 15-week abortion ban should just be tossed out by any court when the first person challenges it.
Okay.
And Mississippi passed this law, and it was immediately challenged in the federal court. And federal court said, yeah, under Casey, that's entirely not legal. And
Right.
then that decision got appealed to the district court, and the district court said, under Casey, it's not what Casey says. And that case got appealed to the Supreme Court and was heard last year. And
now
the
the
draft
decision's come in?
opinion doesn't really address the Mississippi law, which is a 15-week ban. The draft opinion is saying, well, we've looked and we think that the entire foundation that we have built all of the past 49 years on was decided incorrectly. So Mississippi is allowed, if the draft opinion is released, and if it's substantially the way the draft is, Mississippi can have any duration ban they want, because the draft opinion says there is no federal right for any pregnant person to have an abortion at all.
So this probably means that as soon as this Roe v. Wade is overturned, many states will, not just at 15 weeks, they'll ban abortion completely.
There are plenty of states already that still have laws on the book that just entirely ban abortion. And those laws have been not enforced because Roe v. Wade and Casey v. Planned Parenthood and lots of other laws have said that's not an enforceable law. And if the court says Roe v. Wade was not decided correctly, that's not how it works, all those old laws, they don't spring back into existence. They've been in existence the whole time, but suddenly they're enforceable again.
So there can be laws that are, instead of being deleted, they're just unenforceable.
Correct.
And then,
Additionally, there are plenty of states that in the last couple years have passed laws restricting abortion. Mississippi is one. That's how we even got to this case. That, have set different time limits, different conditions, different, abortion clinics must have hallways that are wide enough for 2 gurneys to pass with a 4-foot clearance in the center. And no one builds, hospitals rarely have hallways that wide. So
they passed laws that didn't restrict abortion, but made unreasonable requirements on abortion clinics
many of them, yes.
to essentially close them down.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I know Mississippi and Wisconsin both have laws on the books that totally prohibit abortion under all circumstances.
are these called trigger laws?
No, trigger laws are something different.
What's a trigger law? I heard those are coming out too.
Trigger laws are something that would have been passed recently that would say if the Supreme Court decides Roe v. Wade is not constitutional, then this law we have recently passed will suddenly trigger and take effect.
Okay.
So they are laws that were passed with the hope that if the court overrules it, we can get our law in place, even though we're passing a law that we know when they passed it to be unconstitutional.
Okay. So I've heard that there's 26 states that will probably ban abortion.
Or that already have bans
Yeah,
on abortion on
yeah.
the books.
So it'd be slightly more than half states.
26 is slightly more than half of the states.
Right,
yes.
right. All right. Now, there aren't any federal abortion laws, right?
There are federal abortion laws.
Oh, there are.
I mean, Medicare cannot pay for abortions. That's a federal law.
Oh, really? Okay. But is there any laws about
There are federal
you can
laws
have
that
one?
say what procedures doctors are allowed to use when doing an abortion. There are federal laws that talk about what drugs can be prescribed and by whom, and there's
Okay.
no federal prohibition on abortion in general.
Okay. But could a federal law allow abortions nationwide?
It depends on what the Supreme Court eventually says, but if the draft as we saw it, which was in February, that didn't say abortion is not allowed. It said it's up to states to decide whether abortion is allowed or not.
Right.
And federal law in general overrides state law. So if there were a federal law that codified Roe and said, or codified Casey, then that would overrule any existing state laws which said it was not allowed. Now the states would argue that, you know, if Roe is overruled and there's a federal law that says it's allowed, well, all these other laws we've passed that decide abortion clinics can't be within 7 miles of a school, and they can't, all of those aren't part of Roe, so abortion is effectively still illegal. But yes, in theory, a federal law could overrule state law that prohibited abortions.
Didn't they try last week in the Senate to pass
They
such a law?
did. It didn't pass.
Was it filibustered?
it-
Or did it actually come up to a vote?
I don't believe it was filibustered because it didn't even get a majority. I believe the first vote was whether to even bring it to the floor to discuss,
Okay.
and whether that's on the filibuster or not, but it failed 49 to 51.
Was it a Dan Manchin?
It
he the
was
one?
that damn Manchin, yeah. He was the one Democratic vote. I mean, really, it's that
I wouldn't
damn
call
Susan
him.
Collins.
I wouldn't call him a Democratic vote at this point.
51 frickin' Republicans are the people to blame, and one of them is Joe Manchin.
Joe Manchin is one of the Republicans. Yeah. Essentially. Now, there are times when a woman needs an abortion to stay alive.
Yes.
Now, some of these states that are passing these no abortion laws, are those women screwed out of life?
It remains to be seen. I believe even the Supreme Court draft implies that if a woman's life is in danger, she ought to have the ability to get an abortion. There are state laws that don't allow that at all.
But the Supreme Court leak
But-
that we had would override the state laws?
It would. plausibly, but we don't know.
I've heard about something called an ectopic pregnancy. That's where the egg
where the
got
egg-
fertilized in the wrong place or something.
Yes, it's
I'm
where
not
the
a doctor.
the
See, look
egg
behind
gets
me.
fertilized while it's still in the fallopian tube
Okay.
and begins to grow there. Fallopian tubes are tiny compared to the uterus.
They're not
a
made-
great place
Not
for
made for making babies.
But if the embryo manages to implant in the fallopian tube and begin to get a blood system,
That's the fallopian tube right there.
eventually it'll grow to the point where it ruptures the fallopian tube, and then
Everyone dies.
very likely would kill the mother because she would bleed to death.
And kill the baby.
And if Roe v. Wade is entirely reversed and you're in a state that says life begins at conception and abortion is not allowed, then a doctor does not have the legal right to operate and remove the embryo from the fallopian tube because that's murdering a person. And so the doctors just have to watch as both of them die.
So, abortion is killing the baby. But the baby's not going to live anyways, because the
Abortion
baby
is-
can't live in the fallopian tube.
Terminating a pregnancy. It's not a baby until it's born. It's not a person until it's born.
Right.
We know that. Doesn't have a social security number. Doesn't pay taxes.
Until you pay taxes, not a person.
That doesn't count for the carpool lane.
Oh, the carpool lane you can.
No, it doesn't count for the carpool lane.
Oh, it
I think if it.
So,
But if you can't use an expressway and say, I'm pregnant with twins, I'm at 3 weeks.
Republicans would rather have everyone die than having just one of them die. That seems bonkers to me. Call me a right-wing nut. Call me a left. My left-wingness is showing.
It is, yeah, yeah.
But that sounds crazy.
I concur. They do not.
That makes me angry.
Oh, have you been to a march yet?
Well, no.
It hasn't made you that angry yet, has it?
Is me marching in San Jose going to help? Because California is
No, it's
not
not.
on this side. Miscarriages.
Yes.
That's when God kills the baby.
Sure. It could
Now-
be Satan. We don't know.
Yeah.
Someone.
Someone has killed the baby. The woman
Someone has
to
terminated the pregnancy.
survive still need what's called an abortion.
Sometimes. I mean,
Yeah.
often miscarriages just,
They don't even know what happened.
yeah, or they know they happened, but they don't require medical care.
But there's a fair
But
number,
occasionally,
a reasonable number of people who require an
end
abortion
up
to live.
end up in a doctor's office having some amount of embryonic tissue removed in order to preserve their life
Yes.
or their ability to get pregnant in the future.
And is that going to be illegal?
It's up to the states.
I don't trust some of these states.
I'm with you.
I don't trust Mississippi,
No.
Alabama.
Look, credits.
We got to end this?
I'm just telling you. We can keep talking, but I don't think they're going to hear us.
Okay. IUDs.
Yeah?
I've heard that somehow messed up in this too. Isn't that
It
just a
depends if
contraception?
you declare life begins at conception. IUDs don't prevent conception. They prevent implantation. And so an IUD is therefore an instrument of murder.
Oh, because the egg gets fertilized and then gets flushed out like everything else.
And the IUD keeps the
oh
uterus
shit!
from being...
The people are here. They're on to us.
Now they're on to you. I talked to them
we gotta
after
get
live
in here.
show. They said, I'm fine. You're the one they're trying to catch. Yeah, you better keep going.
Did you call
That
the
way-
police? You called the police
I
on
did
me?
not call the police, but you are on live TV. I mean, it's occurred to you that being on live